Namaste everyone. Today, as a part of the celebration of 75th years of India's Independence Day, the student of B.Ed Special Education Hearing Impairment and Visual Impairment, second semester of SCERT, Mizoram will be presentation on topic, My Vision for India. The students are divided into 4 groups, each group consisting of 15 students, and the group leader of each group will be presenting the presentation for 10 minutes, and it will be followed by 5 minutes discussion. There will be a warning bell after 9 minutes, and the presenter is supposed to finish the presentation after 1 minute. Okay. I hope all the groups are ready for your presentation.
Yes.
Now I'll call upon group number 1 leader to come here and present his presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sila Rongbola. I'm representing Group 1. Today, I'll be delivering on the topic, My Vision for India. India won freedom on 15th August 1947. After a long period of struggle. Since then, 15th August has been celebrated throughout the length and breadth of the country as our Independence Day. It is perhaps the most important day of our country because it is a day that we remember our bygone patriots and freedom fighters who have laid down their lives for the freedom of our country. So India, after having got independence from the British slavery, it is now considered as the largest democracy and the largest and the fastest growing economies in the world. However, India have a lot of improvement to be done, and there are a lot of work that is needed to be done. So we have achieved a political freedom, okay, but we are yet to achieve economic and social freedom. So I have listed out the visions I have for India. So here it goes. The first vision I have for India is for the people to embrace and remain true to their own cultures, identities, and roots. So in the Mizoram context, the Korean and the Western influence has made a great impact. It influences us to have a negative views and thoughts on our own cultures and identities, finding it inadequate and lacking. Let me cite an example from the story of Tumchingi and Raldona. In this story, the ogre, on finding the beautiful shadow of Tumchingi, thought that the shadow was hers, and that made her forget her own identity, her own beauty, and that led to her downfall. Similarly, in the country's journey towards growth and development, it is my prayer that we are not swayed by the beautiful shadow of the developed countries. Otherwise, we may forget our own identities, our own beauty, and our own differences. So let us go back to prioritizing the learning of miso by ingredients before learning the ingredients of Domino's pizza. Second, peace and harmony. Today, India is characterized by communal violence, religious strife, terrorist movement, and regional alienation, etc. We must address this issue if we want to make India a vibrant and glorious India. India is a multicultural, multi-religious, and multilingual nation. And we must address this issue, and we must give due importance to the sentiments of each community. The Gujarat violence, the Mumbai bomb explosion, etc., it speaks volumes of how we managed to turn the land of peace into a land of blood. So, therefore, my vision here is that we all live peacefully and with harmony, and that we don't fight each other anymore. Third, child labor. So child labor has been the most important concern in the world because it affects the child mentally, physically, and socially. So the child labor defines a child as a person who has not completed the age of 14 years. According to ILO, International Labour Organization, there are around 12.9 million children engaging in working between the ages of 7 to 17 years old. Although the Indian government enacted a law against the child labor in 1993, prohibiting dangerous work or activities that could harm the mental, physical, and social development of boys and girls under the age of 18. However, child labor still continue to exist. This is mainly because of poverty, debts, and also the professional needs, etc. So it is important for the government to emphasize this issue and make an effort to combat the poverty, which is the root cause of child labor. So the fourth points I have is disability rights. Since time immemorial, persons with disabilities have never been on the receiving end of the reservation that they are deserving. In spite of the special emphasis put on inclusive education in this education policy and the Right to Education draft bill that states that schools must admit disabled children. However, there is a wide gap between legislation and implementation. Enrollment rates in regular schools are ever increasing. However, children with disabilities still remain the group most likely to be out of school. So in order to make India an inclusive country, we need to address the challenges such as awareness, poor implementation, or sound law, lack of accessibility that is further led to the deterioration of the quality of one's life and lack of special schools. So as I'm a student of B.Ed Special Education, I'm so much aware that there are a lot of improvement that needs to be done. We need to set up and build more and more special schools so that we can make India an inclusive country. So the fifth point I have is health and sanitation. So Indian healthcare system is plagued with a number of problems and challenges. They are fund allocation and inadequate infrastructure. Not enough funds are allocated, and inequality did exist in urban and rural facilities. Due to lack of infrastructure, people, they prefer private healthcare and hospitals because, however, this is not affordable for most of us, mostly the rural population. And secondly, optimal insurance-based service and less emphasis on preventive healthcare and delaying diagnosis of illnesses. Here it means the importance of diagnosis of illness at an early stage is mostly doubted in India. So Gandhiji, he made an emphasis on cleanliness and sanitation as an integral part of Gandhian way of living. However, his dream of clean India is still unfulfilled. It is a responsibility of each of us, be it students, teachers, or workers, to share the burden of cleaning our own surroundings and create awareness on education. And number 6, equality. Equality, despite India being the largest democracy in the world, there are many forms of inequality which is still existing, like casteism. Discrimination against the people on the basis of their caste group is still very common in India. And second, untouchability. This system wrongly looks at people from lower caste as impure or untouchables. And third, class inequality. The gap between the haves and have-not is ever increasing, and it is considered 90% of Indian wealth is heavily concentrated by only 10% of the Indian population. And racism. Everybody deserves equal treatment and fair treatments. Third, lastly, gender equality. The mentality of the people is so patriarchal that it affects the female rights in some areas. Also, the rights for the third genders, that is transgender, is also very significant. Their needs for special treatment are no less different. So the next point I have is education system. So there are several issues which are required to be taken care of in the field of education. It is surprising to know that the Indian universities, none of the Indian universities which we consider reputed made it to the top 100 world university ranking in 2021. So here the government needs to expand its thinking and fund more research institutions. Also, we need to build a community, like a generation of innovators or researchers, so that we can compete with the best universities in the world. Also, we need to focus on quality and relevance, and doing away with quantity and degree. Also, we should make our youth more focused and channelized, and in improving and upgrading their knowledge as per global standards. And the next visions I have is political system. So in my vision for India, the present evils characterizing the Indian political system, such as instability, rampant corruption, political scams, would be unheard of. So in my vision for India, there will be a political system where persons with dubious character are not having a chance to assume any public office. So the ninth slide I have here is agriculture. Agriculture is the lifeline of Indian economy. It supports livelihood of 2/3 population of India. However, increasing population, increasing average income, and globalization effects in India will increase demand for quantity, quality, and nutritious food and variety of food. The average productivity of various crops in India is also quite low. So here it is my vision for India to help teach farmers and agriculturists to utilize modern farming techniques and infrastructure to achieve higher production in their agricultural field. Also, the government must introduce schemes, programs, and funds which will be benefited by the farmers at large. So the last slide I have is science and technology. So India has a long history of scientific achievement, but today the list of Indian scientists who have won the world's prestigious award, the Nobel Prize, begins and ends with C.V. Raman. So India needs to invest more in scientific research as the country lags behind in catalyzing research and development. So in the recently held Indian Science Congress at Tirupati, our Prime Minister Narendra Modi, he pledged to place India in the top 3 countries in the field of science and technology. So it is clear that the future of India in the field of science and technology is quite promising. Thank you. So let's open the time for a discussion, and if you have any questions or doubts, you can ask.
You have mentioned that none of the universities in India have made it to the top 100 world's university ranking. So what do you think is the reason why we did not make it to the top 100?
Thank you for the question. So basically, popular ranking bodies has their own methodology and criteria in giving rankings to the universities. So some of them are reputation, number of international staff and students, feedback, teacher-students ratio and research output. That is number of journals published. So it appears that the Indian universities are not meeting their requirements, and they are not catching up with these requirements that they have made as compared to the rest of the world. So another probable reason is that the reservation system we practiced in India. This reservation system is considered to have an impact in giving rankings, because in the reservation system, seats are reserved for the less privileged sections of the society like ST, SC, and OBCs. So the deserving ones do not get a chance to be admitted, and thus, therefore, they are being rejected and do not given a chance or opportunity. Is there any more questions that you want to ask? Okay, thank you.
That was a nice presentation. Thank you, Group 1. Now I would like to call upon the leader of Group number 2 to present her presentation.
First of all, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Mizoram. I'm representing from Group 2. Today, I will be talking about the vision that I have for India. Development, job opportunities. The employment rate was 39.4% in 2019 to 2020. It's dropped to 27.2% in April and stood at 30.2% in May after it rose to 37.8% in October. So there is need of improved quality of educations. And for the first point of my visions, skills training needs to be imparted in educations. Empowering youth with skills development so the student can get vertical mobility with skills relating to a professions. Universities should move from being knowledge centers to skill centers. Education institutions should focus on experience-based, not only on bookish knowledge. In higher educations, to create educational systems that are more inclusive and societies that are more knowledgeable. Equity in employment for women and disabled persons. Employment equity is better served by having open career structures which do not penalize those taking time out from paid work. Such a structure also improves the lifetime opportunities of women and disabled persons. Flexible working conditions and child supports for the women, for the disabled persons, flexible working hours, and friendly infrastructure in their workplace. And for the visions of investing in technology, India needs to upgrade the regular job skills with technology interventions and bring in more technology. Especially in marketing, new technology developments continue to make certain workplace employees can refresh their skills vertically. Remote learning also has the benefits of taking placed anywhere at any time, centering to the busy schedules of all professionals. And for number 2, technologicals on the global structures and on the economic are creating immense transformations in the way companies and nations organize productions, trade and investing capitals, and develop new products and processes. And for the education inequalities, curriculum should be modernized. Computerized instructions or introducing technology in the school development and evaluation system of learning. Universities should increase within the country. Despite the increased number of professionals college, there is low proportions of students that go on to pursue postgraduate and doctoral educations. Textbook and maintenance of national standard of educations, openness of the materials such as ethnicity, national origins, caste and disability, sexual orientations, educations and religion, and gender equality. Fee structure, a fixed standard of fee in the institutions and controlling them strictly should be used in this topic. And for promotions of government schools in terms of facilities and strictly supervise on teacher and institution performance. Government-made schemes like midday meal, they are a good scheme, but the authority always focus on supervising on the schemes and frequent checking on school performance. They need to check on the school performance and also the improvement of the students in their learnings. Investing in agriculture, strategic irrigations, proper canal irrigations on the basis of the lands and fields. Canal irrigations, using of solid basic structure, making canal that can stand any seasons. Modern sensors to determine the moisture content of the fields. Cover cropping. The first is to prevent soil from eroding away from the fields. The other is to introduce vital nutrients into the soil. This issue arises when fields are left bare after harvest with no roots holding the soils together. It is vulnerable to erosion to driven by the water. To enlarge the coverage of future market, minimize wage fluctuations in price also for hedging risks. Many of the rural poor areas remain excluded due to inefficiencies in the financial. So institutions and the weak regulatory framework, high transaction costs, and risks associated with lending to agriculture. Harvesting fish in irrigation, used for irrigation water as well as it replaces chemical fertilizer. We can also say this is rice fish cultivation system. In maturation period of the crops only permits the harvest of fingerlings if a pragmatic and flexible approach is made use of habitats for such productions. There could be a year-round supply of fish and minimum wastage of stocks of the culture fish. As long as we take the right approach with the right frame of the visions that I have, it will become true and we can make a better India for this. And let's fight for my vision to be practical and to make a better India. And thank you for the presentations that out of the visions that I've talked about. Is there any questions or interest that you need to ask about it?
You have mentioned about the benefits of rice fish cultivation system, right? So
Yes.
regarding that, could you please tell me more about the benefits of rice fish cultivation system?
Thank you for your questions. This method, rice cultivations, is not new in this technology. There is a lot of beneficials. For the first, to restore soil fertility and avoid degradations, which is a major global environmental issues. This system requires only a small amount of pesticides and fertilizers, as it is also a low input system. So is that clear? Okay. Thank you.
Well, then group number 2, Now I would like to call upon the leader of group number 3 to present her presentation.
Good afternoon, my fellow students and respected teachers. Today's presentation is on my vision for India, and my name is Esther Lalianzwali Fanai, and I'll be representing my group, that is Group 3. Independence Day marks the end of British rule in 1947 and the establishment of a free and independent Indian nation. Keeping in mind the aspirations of the freedom fighters of India, I would like to present my vision for India in a few slides as we prepare to celebrate the 75th Independence Day in a befitting manner. For the first slide, the topic is on to be a developed country. Economic development is a critical component that drives economic growth in our economy, creating high-wage jobs and facilitating an improved quality of life. As we all know, development is an important criteria for any sort of nation building to take place, and hence prioritizing development is a key objective. Economic development is further critical for taking the country on a sustainable growth trajectory that needs to necessarily negate the adverse impact of COVID-19. The second point is on elimination of poverty, which will bring the country to focus more on a developmental pattern to achieve sustainable development. And for the fourth point, we have agricultural development. Raising farm incomes is described as the core of the anti-poverty effort, as 3/4 of the poor today are farmers. We are all aware of the farmer suicides that are taking place all over the country. Hence, we require major reforms that will ultimately liberalize the farm sector and free it from dated rules. These reforms can be a starting point to sow the seeds of prosperity of our farmers and other stakeholders to take Indian agriculture on a new trajectory of growth. Improving water management is an effective way to help reduce poverty among farmers. With better water management, they can improve productivity and potentially move beyond subsistence level farming. And for the third slide, the subject is on a better political status. Corruption severely affects the developmental pace in every part of the country. So in order to achieve development that is desirable, I wish for corruption to be eliminated by promoting transparency and stricter reforms on public administration and finance management. Hence, such reforms will help us as a nation in curbing corruption and prevent misappropriation of resources so that future generations will have a better life in our country. For the fourth slide, the subject is on to stop discrimination. I dream of India as a country of gender equality that sees women as an asset and not as liabilities. I would want to see women on an equal footing as men. The second point is on religious discrimination, which is the main problem in India. Therefore, removal of religious discrimination will make our country stronger and peaceful. The third point is on caste discrimination. For ending caste discrimination so that the term unity in diversity can be a reality. And for the last point, eliminating regional discrimination that is prevalent among our minority sections in various parts of the country, which would give further meaning to the term unity in diversity. And on slide 5, we have advancement of education. And for the first point, equality in rural and urban schools. This will help us in eliminating inequalities between rural and urban schools that is based on infrastructure and quality of a teacher, which is a must to achieve better education all over the country. And for the second point, that's on infrastructure. We need to increase capacity of the higher education system, targeting specific outcomes by setting up new institutions and increasing intake of existing ones. Develop technology-based models as virtual classrooms to wider access to high-quality teaching. And for the last point on education, we have research-focused institutions. Starting introduction of research integrated curricula from high school level will bring awareness to the student about the research. This awareness will benefit the country in the future. And for the last slide, which is on technological advancement. Science and technology is a key element for economic growth. Despite all the growth and advancement in recent years, we still have 84 million that can be categorized as poor, the majority being the rural poor. If the power of markets and technology are combined, we have a unique opportunity to transform the lives of the poor in the country. In order to attain the status of a developed country from a developing one, we require major advancements in technology, and for technology to reach every corner of the country, especially in rural areas, so that substantial progress can be achieved in areas such as skill development, agriculture, education, and entertainment. As highlighted from these various points, it is evident that we still have a long way to go to realize our vision. The youth in our country accounts for a substantial amount in the population of India. This proves that you and I can make a collective difference in building an India that is vibrant and prosperous. Now I'd like to conclude my presentation with a poem written by Rabindranath Tagore, where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls, where words come out from the depth of truth, where tireless striving stretches its arms towards perfection, where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way into the dreary desert sand of dead habit, where the mind is led forward by thee into ever-widening thought and action. Into that heaven of freedom, my Father, let my country awake. Thank you. And are there any questions, please?
My name is Leshoy Tuanga. My question is, from your point of view, is discrimination a threat to unity in diversity?
Thank you for your question. Discrimination is indeed a threat to unity. As we all know, India is a multi-pluralistic, multilingual country. And as mentioned by our first presenter, he noted down the problems between legislation and implementation. So even if there's a fight for a bill in Parliament, there's a long process between legislation and implementation, or for the bill to pass through both houses in Parliament. So in that aspect, I think we need to create a dialogue that is sensitive to all the diverse groups in India, and to address the problem of discrimination being a threat to our unity in the country. Thank you.
Thank you, group number 3. Presentation was very interesting. Now I would like to call group number 4 representative.
A very good afternoon to you all. My name is Arl Tansangi and I will be representing group number 4. My group mates and I have sat together and we've discussed a few envisions that we have for our country, so I will be standing here on their behalf. Mahatma Gandhi once said that you must be the change you wish to see in the world. Now we have seen our country resurrect from the chains of British bondage after a long struggle of freedom, which was won in 1947. In the book India 2020, A Vision for the New Millennium, Dr. Kalam described the plan as transforming the nation into a developed country by the year 2020. However, as we are about to celebrate 75 years of independence now, we have to ask ourselves, why is India, even though it is the largest democratic country, still retaining the tag of a developing country for so long? So in the light of that, the mission that we have today is for India to become a developed country by the year 2030. First of all, let us take a look at where India stands. According to the Human Development Index, we can see that India ranks 131st among 189 countries in the world, and which means that India was ranked among the countries with medium human development, which is quite low. If you take a look at the list over here, the ones on the higher up are the ones with better development. So that means that we still have a long way to go. Now, we have listed different categories in which we wish to see development on, and these categories are education in terms of health, agriculture, defense, economy, and all these categories may seem like they're different from each other, but they are all interrelated, and they all lead to the same goal, which is the development of our country as a whole. Now, let us first talk about education, and over here we want to emphasize on education for women and education for the underprivileged. And in education for women, we first want to talk about the low female literacy rate. As you can see here, female literacy rate in India is around 60%. And if you take a look at the chart over here, the ones in blue are the literacy rates, the female literacy rates of the rest of the countries which are more developed than our country. And if you can see, the one in red over here is that of India's. And the yellow line on the top depicts the world average. And we can clearly see that India is 22 percentage points below the world average. Apart from the low female literacy rate, there is also a wide gender disparity. Now, that means that there is a huge gap between the male literacy rate and the female literacy rate. Now, if you take a look at the chart over here, they've listed some states such as Rajasthan, Andhra Pradesh, Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, and Jharkhand. And if you take a look at the female and the male literacy rate, you can see that there is a difference of around 20 percentage points between the two. The government has pointed out different schemes to promote education for women. I've just listed them out here. I will not go into detail with these. The next topic is on education for the underprivileged, and under that we have minorities first. Now, the Right to Education Act, we've studied that it guarantees free and quality education to all children aged between 6 and 14. And apart from this, we also know that there are certain incentives like midday meal scholarships and even reservations, which are basically designed to encourage maximum enrollment of students from the underprivileged backgrounds. But as per a survey revealing, we can see that India's organized sector has only 34 million people, which is really low as compared to the entire population, that is about 1,380 million. And according to NSSO, we can also see that 32 million Indian children of age up to 13 years have never attended any school, and the majority of them belong to the socially disadvantaged class. So it is clear that free education along with a midday meal does not suffice. The next topic I want to talk about is on the disabled community. Now, if you take a look at the pie chart over here, if you take the whole circle to be the amount of Indians with special needs, and among that, the small sector in dark blue represents the amount of the percentage of Indians with special needs who have graduated, and the sector in red represents 45.1% of Indians with special needs who are still illiterate. Now, on this topic, we can see that initiatives and measures have been taken, but people are still not aware of that. If we take, for example, a small state like ours in Mizoram, as you all know, the institution that we are studying in right now, SCERT, is training us to become teachers for the disabled community. But I think all of you must have encountered at least one person or the other who still has no idea that such training is happening right now. Our next topic is on health, and over here we want to stress about the expenditure and budget. On a global healthcare access and quality HAQ index, India has slipped to the 150th rank. Generally, studies have shown that countries that spend more on health per capita had better health and had built better health systems scored higher on the HAQ index. But India spends only 1.6% of the gross domestic product GDP on health, which is relatively low as compared to countries such as China, USA, and Germany. The government of India aims to increase healthcare spending to 3% of the GDP by 2022, and we certainly wish that the national and state budget allocations increase by at least 25% in the next year, and so on and so forth. The next topic we want to stress about is on diseases such as tuberculosis and malaria. Now, India accounts for about a quarter of the global TB burden, and for malaria, India represents 3% of the global malaria burden. Now, the government is calling for the elimination of tuberculosis by 2025, and India also has a vision of a malaria-free country by 2027, and the total elimination by 2030, which we definitely hope will happen, because, for instance, if you take the case of COVID-19. There are 2 COVID-19 vaccines which are approved right now. They are Covishield and Covaxin. And as you can see, India has supplied close to 60 million doses to other countries. Now, there are 2 things which we must take from this. Number one is that, of course, this will definitely help the economy of our country. But at the same time, it poses a question. If India is capable of launching 2 vaccines in such a short amount of time, then why have we still not eradicated the cases such as tuberculosis and malaria? So the reason that we feel is because COVID-19 does not discriminate between the rich and the poor. Every individual, irrespective of their background or their region, we all have the same chance of getting infected by COVID-19. Whereas in cases such as TB and malaria, it is found to be prevalent in areas where there are really poor healthcare systems and poor sanitation. So we feel that the reason behind this is only due to a lack of interest and negligence. Next up, we want to quickly talk about agriculture. Over here, let us see that we can see that in India, agriculture was the main source of national income and occupation at the time of independence. And even today, more than 60% of the workforce is engaged in agriculture. India is primarily an agricultural country, as 2/3 of its population depends on agriculture. If you take a look at the image over here, you can see that 18% of GDP is contributed by agriculture in India, which has now increased to 19.9% in 2021. Let us take a look at the contribution of Indian agriculture to the world. India's rank in agriculture production 2020 is 74th out of 113 prime countries, and India ranks first in milk and wheat production, second in dry fruits, third in fish production, fourth in egg, and fifth in poultry production. And it also contributes 60% to overall India's agricultural gross domestic product, only by animal farming and horticulture. So with better promotion and increase in production, we truly believe that agriculture can play a huge role in contribution to the growth of our economy. Next up, we quickly want to touch up on defense. Over here, we want to mention about the budget and expenditure. Now, you can see in the chart that India jumps to 3rd rank in global military expenditure. That means it is among the top 5 spenders in terms of military. The government is planning on buying a number of military equipment and machines like helicopters, jet fighters, submarines, and AK-203s. But our vision is that India reforms to producing these equipment and selling them instead of buying them, which will in turn improve the economy of our country, which leads us to the last point, economy. India is the world's 6th largest economy by nominal GDP and 3rd largest by purchasing power parity. Now, India had overtaken the UK in 2019, but now it has been relegated to the 6th spot in 2020. As you can see in the chart over here, India's GDP growth has increased rapidly over the last years. You can see that the vision that we have in terms of economy for India, since India is the fastest growing economy with 8.8%, followed by China, the National Intelligence Council stated that India's economy will outrun China by 2030. And according to one of the UK's leading economics consultancies, India will become the world's 3rd largest economy by 2030, overtaking the UK, Germany, and Japan. And in terms of science and technology, we can say science and technology is fundamentally changing the way we live and work. So by 2025, the digital economy is expected to account for approximately 18 to 23% of the total GDP. And we are also, another vision that we have is India will lead in terms of entrepreneurship with emerging entrepreneurs throughout the country. And it is also our aim to increase the rate of employment growth over here. And since India is planning to achieve achieve 40% of its energy from non-fossil sources by 2030, we can clearly see that this will benefit the Indian economy to a huge extent. So to conclude, the critical challenges India faces today can only be overcome through communication and cooperative initiatives between the people of India and the current political administration. If the issues that we have mentioned above go unaddressed, then India might encounter severe consequences that can result in potential and even permanent damage to India's chance of becoming a developed nation. The government is trying to drag up the falling economic status of India, and we, the people, must assist them by impacting the society, because there is still time to gift ourselves a developed nation. Jawaharlal Nehru once said, "India is rich, but Indians are poor." Let us all refute this saying and take every small step in channelizing India towards development. Our group envisions and strongly believes that if we work together, we can strive towards making India a developed country by 2030. Thank you. Is there any question?
Yeah, I would like to ask you one question. In your slide, I saw a slogan, which is Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, which is a Hindi word. And so you have mentioned about literacy, the women literacy rate. And if there is an increase in women literacy rate, how will our country benefit from it? That's my question.
Now, before, in one of the slides, I have, in slide number 9, if you can please show that for me. In slide number 9, due to lack of time, I did not mention about this, but yes, there. So over here, we can see the effects of lack of education, which prevents women's participation in the workforce, number 1, which will in turn hinder the country's development. And number 2, we can see significant impact on the development of future generations, as the mothers have a more direct role to play in the child's education as compared to that of the fathers. And another thing is that an addition of a year of schooling to a mother's education has a significantly higher impact on the next generation than an addition to the father's schooling by the same number of years. And further, we can see better birth outcomes like higher birth weight and lower child mortality, which are observed among educated mothers. So if we increase the female literacy rate, then all these visions will be met. So that is how I can answer you. Thank you.
Thank you, all the groups. All the groups have done well. Your presentation was wonderful and interesting. And now I would like to wind up our program. Jai Hind.